All right, you AMDXers, listen up. I started telling you a story that my father, I bought an NC 125 from a kid that went to me, and went to tech school with me. He needed money to hop up his car to be a racer. And he was selling off all the stuff his parents bought for him. And at first, I took home the NC 125, and I ended up buying a regulator tube for it at Berger Electronics. And my father really didn't like the radio, which he was wrong. It's like the NC 125's great tube radio. I have the NC 57. It's the same circuitry. I don't know why my father didn't like the radio, but he did go to food fair. Back in those days, food fair, pantry pride, whatever it was at the time, had a book section. And he went in there and he looked around and he found the book is by Howard Sams. It's North American Radio TV Station Guide. That's Howard Sams, North American Radio TV Station Guide. Now, he brought me home the ninth edition, which would be 1973. But I do believe I was in RCA in 1974, so the book was like a year old. Now, you can get it as a PDF online for free. Now, what's unique about the book? Well, it does it does AM, FM, and television, but we're just talking AMDX. Now, you go into each state, and it'll show you all the AM broadcast stations that there are and the power. Now, if you what I used was the frequency guide. You go down in all the frequencies from like was it 520 kilohertz up to 1500 in those days. Well, anyway, you pick a frequency and then you go on that frequency at night and then you look at the list and it shows you all the states that are on, all the different stations by call sign, and in the right hand side it's got the power. So you can realize that you're in a clear channel. A clear channel would be 50,000 watts. So you're most likely going to get that clear channel station on that frequency. And then if you make a box antenna and rotate it, you might get one or two other stations. But anyway, that was what I went. I'd go each night. I would do a frequency, and you'd go on there. And some frequencies were I don't know if Clear Channel was Clear Channel for the strong station, or it was Clear Channel was the frequencies that the big guys weren't on. But anyway, you'd go on it and you'd hear a station, and then you look through the list and you look at the powers and what states are closest to you. I would put a little pencil mark next to what I thought it would be, and now that I had the call sign, I would sit there and wait because sometimes the station would go in and out, and just when they would say the call signs, yeah, it would fade out just when they would be saying that. And then some stations, when they're given the traffic report or an accident report, they would mention something that would remind you. It would be let's see, out of the state, it would be a section of the state, and then you would realize what state you had. And then when the station began with a K, it was uh, uh, to the west of the Mississippi River. If it was a W, like WABC, WMCA, whatever, that was East Coast. So there were several ways you would sit there and you could figure out what station you were listening to. And I told you I would take the pencil and I put the little tiny mark next to the station that I received, and then I'd go up the dial every night a different frequency for a little bit. I wouldn't spend all night. And then when I built the box antenna, I'd go back on each frequency and I'd rotate the antenna and get two more stations on the same frequency. But the North American Radio TV Station Guide is what I used. I used the ninth edition. I downloaded it as a PDF. I also downloaded, I think, the last version of it in 1981 or something like that. But it was a little tiny book, and it was very helpful. Now, also, you can go on radio electronics, other parts of the internet, and you will find the strongest stations by frequency for AM. That list is for guys that want to get all 50 states using a crystal radio. Now you have a slight advantage. You have a radio that has tubes and amplification, but don't don't sell those crystal radio guys short, because they've gotten all 50 states from their location, but their antenna is 250 feet long. It's high up in the air high. It's three wires, three three horizontal wires, and they use a giant radiator or something they put in the ground with salt to be their ground. So you probably won't go to all those lanes. You might be in an apartment building, so you have more of a disadvantage than they do. You're like, oh, they got all 50 states with a crystal radio. I could do it easily with your favorite radio. Fill in your favorite blank of radio. Now, I also wanted to mention that I went looking in this radio, my NC57, and here's the tube from the first RF, and it's a 6AC7. Also, the first IF tube in this radio is a 6AC7, and that it has more oomph than a 6SG7. All right, so I have two of these tubes in there, and I showed you on one of the videos how much more signal you'll get changing the RF tube, the 6SG7 to a 6AC7, without doing any wiring. Right? That's what I showed you. But I went looking for the book that my dad bought at Food Fair. They had another name before it was Pantry Pride. I can't think of it. I had it and then I didn't have it. But in other words, just like the radio stations got bought out, the food places that we had a food fair. We went to food fair for years, and it got bought out several times. Pantry Pride. How I remembered all the names was I used to save the paper bags. Remember paper bags? And then one day when I was getting ready to move, I pulled the paper bags out and I was using them to put stuff in. And there was the food fair, Pantry Pride, and there was another food something. Well, anyway, it's funny stuff. But everything changes. But I'm setting up right now for wintertime. I'll probably go through the dial one more time. Now that I have the book, I can print each frequency and do each frequency at night and see what I can pick up here. And I noticed the dial at night, every 10 kilohertz, 10 kilohertz apart? Yeah, hopefully it's 10 kilohertz. And there is a radio station all the way up the dial every 10 kilohertz on this radio. That's when you know you got a good radio. Now during the day, the dial isn't as full because you just get local AM. So I do get one or two Philly stations, being out in Lancaster, PA. And but at night, a lot of Philly stations, a lot of Delaware stations. So I'm out in the sticks, sorta. All right, and when I DX'd the last time very seriously, like I said, it was 1974. It was a layoff from RCA, and it was winter time. They laid us off for Christmas, and I think that was the year the dogs barked jingle bells. I remember it very sort of vividly. It could be maybe 2 or 3 winters in a row where I'd go up there. Television's reruns. You got to remember that in the old days you only had 5 channels. I was in the New York area. I had like 5 good channels, and they go to reruns during Christmas. And the commercials, the Christmas shopping commercials. So I go up in my room and I would DX AM. And because back in those days, each station was owned privately. So you would tune across the United States, and each station could be a surprise. Like I told you, bluegrass music, Uh, Now it's all, last night I did 5,500, 550 kilohertz, and it was a sports station. So I got to look at my book and get, it's probably Philly, out of Philly. And that's the thing. But I told you years ago, I was showing people they could get the hockey game on certain frequencies out of Canada. And they're like, well, why doesn't this radio get it? Because it's a piece of shit radio. Tell them it's a piece of shit. I paid a lot of money for it. It's still a piece of shit. It's not a good radio. It's missing all the pieces that you need to get good. You know, it's flashy looking. It's got FM. It's got shortwave. It's probably got a cassette player in it. But for what you want to do, you want to hear the hockey game. You're going to need a radio that has the pieces that one's missing. And then you try to explain to people when they first made radios, they really put a lot in them, and they had radio figured out probably 1935 and on. They had the RF amp. They had really good tuned circuits, big honking coils, so they get the most Q. The tubes were starting to get really good because the radio started probably 1925, something like that, and the tubes look like light bulbs. But when they get to the 30s, like 35, 37, those Philcos are really good radios. And then they started making some of them cheaper. They give you a big wooden cabinet, and then you're tuning the radio, and you're not getting stations so your friends are getting, out of state. Anybody can get local stations. But that's why I told people they took stuff out. And Hellcrafter, I meant the one guy come in and said that his S20 has the bigger IF cans. But they did. They dumbed it down. Now that I looked it up real quick, the Hellcrafters I'm gonna make sure I'm saying Hellcrafters S40 has the A model. The first model has 3 IF cans, and each one of them is a different coil configuration. But the NC57 has 3 IF cans. All 3 are different. But the first IF, has 3 windings in it. So I guess the oscillator won't get pulled by the IF. So they changed the impedance. It's really, the NC57 is just so much better than this guy's S40. It's got the regulator tube in there to keep your oscillator from drifting up on the high frequencies. It's got a choke in there to get rid of hum. It's got the dial. I won't say, yeah, the dial is better on the B model of the NC57. It's got a little wheel that presses up against a large copper disc, and it's got a dial cord, and that's to give you really good control of your tuning dials. And I think it does have a weight in there, but anyway, they just gave you so much more for the same amount of money. And I own, like I told you, an NC125, which was a dial cord, but it had the pointer on it. And I wasn't really happy with that. This I like. And I can get the calibration on the AM dial, so where I know what frequency I'm actually on. And I always verify with my DX390, the station. But I just did this video to tell you that you can go online and get the North America Radio TV Station Guide, and you can get whatever edition. I got my 9th edition, and I can look at the cover of that and remember back when I had the book. I sold that book. I was at a flea market, and the guy picks the book up, and he goes, does this have a... Yeah, it's got the AM broadcast in there by frequencies and by state. The guy bought it. He bought it full price. I don't know. It was $1.95. I get the $1.95 out. And I started to explain it, but the guy knew what it was. He was just looking for one. And at that point, when I was doing the ham flea markets, it was in the 80s. And that book probably had run out of print, and he just wanted the AM radio stations usually keep the same call letters, even though they change hands. So it's the guide from the 9th edition from 1973 will probably still be dead on for all the stations that are still on. And I'm happy I did this video without going off into a rant. I have to come up with more hobbies for when the winter time hits, and that's what this is all about. I'm revisiting the hobby, uh, just before bedtime. I can shut off all the noisy appliances in the house, and I still get out here. I get you get electric fences for the cows. It's a long piece of wire, and they send a high voltage pulse through it, and it does transmit. Especially if it's arcing over to a tree or whatever, it becomes quite loud. But I just want to tell you, this NC57 does have two 6AC7. One is in the RF, and one is in the first IF, and that makes the radio a lot hotter without doing anything else to the radio. I think that's it. All right, that's it.